Have you ever walked away from a conversation just kind of wondering, wait, did I just agree to do that? Well, you're definitely not alone. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're really shining a light into the shadows to take a hard look at dark psychology. We so often picture dark psychology as something straight out of a slick spy thriller or some intense true crime documentary. But the chilling reality? It's not a myth. It is an everyday, very real threat to our personal security. The tricks we're going to unpack today are highly effective, and honestly, there's a really good chance they are already being used on you. Okay, let's dive into this. The reason these tactics work so unbelievably well is that they completely bypass our conscious defenses. We don't realize we're being manipulated because these techniques are perfectly disguised as normal, everyday human interactions. Things like affection, basic logic, or even just casual gossip. Manipulators use these covert tricks in our daily lives to quietly, almost invisibly steer our decisions. But here's the thing. Once you can actually see the strings, no one can pull them. So consider this explainer your ultimate tactical survival guide. Today we'll be looking at the hidden threat, the trap of love bombing, weaponizing reason and consensus, the strategic misinformation trap, manipulation through self-abasement, and then finally we'll build out your mental defense strategy. Let's start with Section 1, the hidden threat and demystifying dark psychology. Now, dark psychology is a highly controversial topic. A lot of folks are actually terrified to even talk about it because they think it's too complicated, too risky, or just kind of taboo. But we really need to strip that fear away. Our goal here today is strictly about self-protection. We aren't learning this stuff to go out and manipulate others. We're learning it so that others absolutely cannot manipulate us. And to protect yourself, you have to realize that manipulation hides right in plain sight. These tactics, they aren't just confined to high-stakes interrogations in dark rooms. They are happening right at your family dinner table. They're happening in your workplace. They're happening right now on your social media feeds, or even when you just walk into a retail store to buy a new phone. It is literally everywhere. Moving on to Section 2, the trap of love bombing and how extreme affection becomes control. So we're shifting from the broad concept of manipulation into a very specific, very dangerous emotional trap. This is known as love bombing. It's when someone shows you excessive attention, way more than is normal or necessary. They speak incredibly sweetly to you, they praise you constantly, and they surprise you with gifts. The whole goal here is to quickly form an incredibly intense bond so they can take control of your thinking. And while we mostly hear about this in romantic relationships, our source notes that this trick actually works just as well in friendships, within families, among coworkers, and very heavily on social media. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact timeline of how it works. Step 1, the manipulator just floods you with excessive attention. Step 2, an intense bond forms. Even if you didn't really want that closeness initially, you suddenly feel deeply, deeply connected to them. Then comes Step 3, which is the pivot. Once the love bomber knows they've got you hooked, they dramatically reduce their affection. They just withdraw. This sudden shift severely harms the target emotionally. And that leads right into Step 4, target compliance. Just to keep the relationship intact and win back that initial crazy high of affection, the target starts accepting strange or totally unreasonable demands. And without even realizing it, they've become a victim. All right, Section 3, weaponizing reason and consensus, the illusion of logic and social proof. So that last one was an emotional attack. But manipulators don't just target our feelings, they heavily target our brains. This next tactic is incredibly simple but brutally effective, weaponizing reason. Let's compare these two scenarios. Imagine a total stranger comes up to you and just flat out asks for money. You'd probably just say no, right? But what if they say they urgently need the money because they literally haven't eaten since yesterday? You are far, far more likely to open your wallet. The truly terrifying part here? Even if that reason is completely fabricated, just presenting a strong-sounding logical argument dramatically increases your vulnerability. To highlight just how far this psychological loophole goes, our source gives this fascinating extreme example. Say a mastermind is planning a bank robbery. They don't go out looking for young, strong people who are doing great in life. Instead, they specifically seek out poor, unemployed individuals. Why? Because the mastermind can use persuasive reasoning to convince them that robbing the bank is actually the right, totally logical move for their own survival. With a convincing reason and a solid plan, ordinary people can literally be manipulated into committing serious crimes. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how closely related the illusion of logic is to the illusion of consensus, also known as social proof. We tend to trust that something is right simply because others are endorsing it. The underlying psychology here is super fascinating. When we feel confused or unsure about a situation, our natural instinct is to look around at others to figure out what's right. Manipulators absolutely know this, and they will manufacture that consensus just to force your hand. Let's ground this concept with a few everyday examples from the source material. Remember that mobile phone store from earlier? Let's say you go in wanting brand A, but they're out of stock. The salesman immediately shows you brand B, claims it's the absolute best on the market, and then adds, I actually use this exact phone myself. Your brain goes, well, if the guy who runs the store uses it, it's got to be good. You buy it, only to find out later it's actually pretty terrible. That is classic social proof manipulation. Big brands use it all the time by highlighting positive reviews or celebrity endorsements. Or on a more personal level, imagine 10 of your friends loudly praising you for a small favor right in front of your crush. That manufactured consensus creates a highly positive, almost unbreakable image in your crush's mind. And look, this is not just anecdotal stuff. These are deeply, rigorously studied psychological vulnerabilities. The source specifically points out that the renowned psychologist Robert Cialdini famously described this exact phenomenon in his landmark book, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion. We as humans are biologically wired to follow the crowd, and manipulators actively use that very wiring against us. This brings us to Section 4, the strategic misinformation trap, or extracting the truth by going slightly wrong. Okay, so we've covered emotion, logic, and crowds. Now let's introduce what might be the absolute stealthiest tactic of the whole bunch. This is a highly effective conversational weapon used by top-tier manipulators. It's called going slightly wrong, or strategic misinformation. And here is the exact extraction formula. Step 1, the manipulator casually states a deliberate, usually small inaccuracy. Step 2, this triggers your completely natural human urge to correct them. Let's face it, we all love being right. Step 3, in your absolute rush to correct them, you unwittingly hand over truthful, hidden, or highly private information. For example, let's say a nosy neighbor says to you, "Hey, I heard Parmita topped the class." Now, you know for a fact that's wrong, so you jump right in and say, "No, actually, she really struggled on her past exams and only got a B." Boom. The manipulator just extracted private, sensitive details about Parmita's academic record simply by baiting you with a slight error. Section 5. Manipulation through self-abasement and the absolute power of playing the victim. So if love bombing is manipulation through a massively inflated ego, self-abasement is the total opposite. It's manipulation through extreme self-pity. Let's look at this contrast. Imagine your partner has done something genuinely wrong and you are rightfully angry about it. The healthy, normal response is them facing your anger directly, taking accountability and apologizing. But a manipulator? They won't do that. Instead, they go straight to extreme self-pity. They'll say something like, "I'm really terrible. I just can't love properly. I ruin everything I touch." It is reverse psychology at its absolute finest, and it completely derails your totally valid argument. So the crucial point is this. The manipulator intentionally belittles and insults themselves entirely to shift the dynamic of the conversation. Suddenly, you aren't angry at them anymore. Now, you feel this weird obligation to reassure them. You literally end up comforting the person who just wronged you. They seamlessly extract sympathy, forgiveness, and even compliments, completely bypassing any sort of real accountability. And finally, Section 6. Your mental defense strategy for protecting yourself from dark psychology. We have successfully diagnosed the threats. We've seen exactly how manipulators use love, logic, crowds, conversational bait, and self-pity against us. Now, here is your ultimate mental defense protocol. We're mapping each specific tactic directly to an actionable mindset. When you're faced with love bombing, your immediate defense is to strictly question unearned excessive early affection. When a manipulator tries to weaponize reason, do not get blinded by their elaborate sob story. Stop and analyze the actual request being made. For social proof, you have to commit to trusting your own independent research over crowd hype or some smooth salesman's claims. When someone goes slightly wrong in a conversation, bite your tongue. Seriously, resist the urge to overcorrect them. And finally, when you are faced with self-abasement, hold your boundaries firm. Do not reward their manipulative self-pity with the compliments or the easy forgiveness they're desperately trying to steal from you. Dark psychology literally relies on you being asleep at the wheel. But with this structured defense strategy, you are now wide awake. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final vital challenge to analyze in your own life. Look closely at the people you interact with on a daily basis. Which of these hidden manipulation traps are you most vulnerable to right now, today? Stay vigilant out there.